Welcome to the Galactic Mind Weather Report. So today I'm coming to you on the yellow galactic warrior. So that's the 8th day of the 13 days of the red moon wavespell. And also happens to be the day that many in this timeship Earth celebrate as Christmas Day. So happy season's greetings to all of you, whatever season you're celebrating, as we come to the end of the Gregorian year. Now, if you follow the weather report, you know that we're in the red moon wavespell. So these 13 days is all about purification to help us release the stagnancy inside of our emotional bodies so that we can allow ourselves to flow with the river of life again, fully, just to fully embrace it, to explore. And what better time than at the end of the Gregorian year to have this red moon wavespell move through the collective and really cleanse and move this energy. Today is Yellow Galactic Warrior, and normally I come on the 7th day, which was yesterday. Happens to be Alexander Supertramp, Christopher McCandless's galactic birthday, the Blue Resonant Eagle. But due to the seasons and everything happening and synchronicity, I'm presenting it today. And it's actually worked out really beautiful because in my contemplation of this archetype and what's been showing up around me, I really started contemplating this idea of the yellow galactic warrior as really speaking to emotional accountability. So what is emotional accountability? Well, because if we think about the red moon wavespell, we're talking about water, we're talking about emotions. And the yellow galactic warrior is, it's guided by the yellow galactic sun, which is all about shining the light on the world around us, our adventure, in order to really bring enlightenment, understanding from a reflection of what is happening around us. And when we look at accountability, so before we even talk about emotional accountability, what is accountability? What is accounting? And let's bring it back to the financial world. Accounting, what does an accountant do? An accountant goes into a business or into a personal, you can do personal accounting or business accounting, and looks at the money that you are spending and the money that you are earning, the money that you owe and the money that you are owed, borrowing, lending. It looks at all these aspects, and the accountant's job is to bring it into balance and it give you an oversight so that you understand where you are with your finances, with your money. And the beautiful thing, I used to resist this a lot because, I trusted in that, everything will flow, I'll always have enough. And yes, I did always have enough. But I also never knew where I was. And part of that meant that I wasn't able to stand on solid ground to really make conscious, plans to target my awareness to what I wanted to create. Because I was always in this kind of survival synchronicity state, which was beautiful for its part. So an accountant's job is to look at where is your finances so that you can have a clear picture of where you are with the money that you have. And from that clear picture, you can create a plan, a vision of where you want to go and what you can do to improve it, if that's what you need. Now, when we then take that concept and bring it into emotional accountability, what does that mean? So if you think about money, as much as we get caught up in this blaming things on money, and okay, there's a lot of complexity don't take this too literally, but any form of exchange we used to use, whether it was shells or cacao beans or gold or fiat currency, it's used to measure the exchange of energy. The idea is how much energy did I put into something? How much value is in this thing? Which is basically how much energy has gone into it that is worth something to somebody else. Now, money, its main purpose was a measure of energy, basically, so that we could, exchange easily. So if we take that idea of accountability as measuring energy, let's then transfer that to emotional energy. So emotional accountability is where we need to be our own emotional accountants. We need to be able to, and this is the yellow galactic warrior, to, on a mental plane, to fearlessly question how our emotional accounts are sitting. Where have we been projecting our emotions outside, in a way, lending our energy to others or borrowing somebody else, and their service. They take our emotional blame for a little bit and that offsets us and makes us feel a bit comfortable. But what we've done is actually gone into debt with somebody else. You know, you get these sticky emotional games we play with each other by projecting and blaming on each other. And when we can project and blame, whether it's individually on each other or if we're blaming on social groups, etc., it feels good in one sense because it lightens the feeling of responsibility for that shitty feeling that we've got. But the fact is that all we've done is offset the mental story somewhere else. But the fact is that that emotional imbalance, that separation and division that is created by this emotional imbalance still exists. And we live in a kind of schizophrenia. So then what happens is, when we are in this kind of emotional debt, I guess you could say, we're not able to see the world clearly. Because in order to maintain this story that somebody else is to blame for my shit situation or my crappy feeling, it's somebody else's fault. They said this, someone did that, or, you know, I've got such a hard life, it was such a, you know, I was so unlucky. When I project out these excuses, then it actually takes all my ability to respond. You know, it's putting responsibility for these problems, these challenges I face, outside of myself to somebody else. And when you put responsibility outside of yourself, you project it at somebody else, you're actually projecting the ability to do anything about it outside at everybody else. So I really look at this yellow galactic warrior archetype as, you know, evolving our capacity to be fearless in the way we question our own emotional checkbook. Where are we projecting out our emotional energy into the world and projecting and blaming the outside world? And where are we not in balance in our own bodies? Where have we got, you know, bitterness and anger and you know, these kind of sticky emotions stuck somewhere stagnant, you know, like money in a shoebox hidden away in a cupboard that's not helping us, that's not of use because it's tucked away and stuck. You know, where have we got these emotional energies in our body, in our cellular memory? And really questioning, you know, why are they there? How did they get there? You know, whose fault is it really? And making sure that we are taking responsibility for our part of the dilemma. And it's a very challenging thing to do. It's very confronting. It's sticky. It's yeah. You know, we've all experienced it. It's confronting when our outside world reflects something back to us and we don't want to own it. But I've really tried myself, and I encourage others to try, not to beat yourself up for the mistakes, but to own mistakes. Because when we own our mistakes, you know, there might be how you reacted to somebody else. And it may have been out of fear. It may have been justified by some, you know, social reason or ethical reason. But it still puts you out of balance. This isn't about right or wrong. It's not about who's to blame. It's about taking check of where your emotional energy is invested. And if you have invested your emotional energy into some wounding that's happened years ago, then it's still in there earning interest on that wound. And it's still coming back into your life, repeating itself, attracting those same frequencies in order to reinforce the story so that you can continue to believe it and continue to put the responsibility outside of yourself. But when you can begin to really own that responsibility, that yes, 5 years ago, maybe someone broke into my house and took everything I own. But that was 5 years ago. Every day since, it might have been me that has kept it alive. Me that has kept telling the story. Me that has projected the blame for where I am now on something that happened 5 years ago. And that means my emotional checkbook is out of balance. it's in this negative state because I've kind of loaded it up elsewhere. And when I go in and fearlessly question with my heart's intelligence, what did that break in 5 years ago that took everything? What control does that have on the very next action I take right now? And be as honest with myself as possible. What does it actually have? What did that perpetrator, that person that stole my stuff, what control do they really have right now? And when I really drop into those situations, more often than not, we find nothing. It's now me that is continuing the story. Me that is projecting the blame outward. And when we can embrace this galactic warrior, this capacity to fearlessly question this and bring it back to ourselves, in our family dynamics, all around the world with Christmas, there'll be a lot of people getting triggered by family dynamics. But it takes two to tango. And if we can all own our own reactive parts, then we can do our part in disarming those reactions. Stop playing that game with the other. Stop projecting out onto each other. And when one person stops, then the other person can try and project it. But if you stop playing the game, they can't do it. It won't stick to you. Your emotional checkbook will be clean, and it will come back at them, and it will cause a turbulence until they can work out their own way through it. And so when we can do this, then we begin to clear our emotional bodies. And when we can clear our emotional bodies, we allow our emotions to flow fluidly again, naturally. And this is really important because our emotions, when they're out of balance, when they're not being accounted for, then they run havoc in our lives. They begin to fill up until our eyeballs are full of this emotional, and for happiness as well, when we let our bliss get out of control, we end up seeing through this watery view of bitterness or anger or bliss or whatever it is. And we begin to see a very filtered version of our reality. And so the key is, by fearlessly questioning with our heart's intelligence and bringing our emotional checkbook back into balance, we are able to see clearly again. And our emotions will be free to move. And that means when we do feel an emotion, when bitterness does come up, when some anger comes up, when some fear comes up, when something comes up in that moment, then we can begin to trust it because it's relevant to that moment and it's trying to tell us something so that we can take an action and account for it in that moment. And then we can begin to live moment for moment in the now and truly reach these intimacies, these connections with each other that just blow the heart open, and that's what will transform this world. So for all that rambling, what I'm trying to say is that one of the greatest services I believe we can do for the world right now is to balance our own emotional checkbooks, to find our own center and stop playing the game of projection and blame and separation. That doesn't mean get walked over, but it means not looking for someone else to offset your suffering. And when we begin to own that, and we begin to bring that suffering into our heart, like Jesus Christ, the story of Christ, bringing that suffering into his heart and transmuting it through his own suffering on behalf of mankind, whether it's real or not is irrelevant. That metaphor is real. When we can take this and transmute it in our heart, then we can really change this place. It begins to shine. You begin to shine. And those around you will begin to follow your lead. But it has to be unconditional. If you do this and think you're taking charge of your emotional checkbook, as long as everyone else does, it's not really happening. You're still projecting outwards. It's an inside game. It's an inside job, and you can't rely on the outside results. But what I can tell you from my experience is that every layer I move through this, every time I step up in authenticity to my own wounding, to my own suffering, and start taking responsibility for what I have created and where I have caused hurt and where I have caused the separation in my own life, the deeper I get to connect with those around me, the deeper I'm connecting with myself, and the more exquisite the world around me becomes. And I could wish nothing more than a taste of pure presence for everyone during this beautiful part of the season, as we close off the Gregorian 2017 and enter into the second half of this 13 moon year and what we call 2018 in the Gregorian calendar, and create a whole new world together. With all my love.